Hello everybody, welcome back. I've got a thrift vinyl haul to share with you today in the folk genre. It's kind of not a genre that I see represented a whole lot across the vinyl community, other than a few kind of trendy artists, which in most cases I'd never heard of when I was growing up. It's a genre that doesn't seem to get a lot of respect among vinyl collectors. So you can always find these records in the dollar bins, thrift stores, and that is where I found my haul today. It's kind of on the verge of summer as I record this. We had an early stretch of hot, sunny weather, and yesterday we had some rain. Today's kind of alternating between cloud and sun. It's those kind of days where it's that kind of ennui sets in. You have things to do, there's chores to do outside, but you're not going to do them. So better to stay inside, spin some records, think about music, and that gets me in the mood to listen to this kind of acoustic, folk kind of music. It's kind of been part of my musical upbringing, I guess you would say. First off, though, I'm going to show some records I inherited not too long ago. I wasn't really going to show these on video, but I thought it kind of tied in with what I'm going to show today. My mom passed away in 2015. My dad recently downsized his house, so a couple of months ago we were all in his house, and in the basement he had the old collection of records that I grew up with in the house, and he was going to get rid of all of them. I think he kind of kept some for himself. He does still have a player my mom bought before she passed away, but the records were there. Had to flip through them. I kind of pulled out one or two after she passed away that I wanted most, but there was a few more there. They're mostly in really bad condition. I probably wouldn't even play many of them, so I was going to leave them behind. Got up to the top of the stairs, and then I was kind of hemming and hawing and thinking, I'm never going to see these records again if I don't go back and get a few. So just to kind of give you an idea of the records I grew up with, this was one of my mom's, Judy Collins, Whales and Nightingales. This is kind of a different one with whale noises in between the songs. Electra label, very bad condition, unfortunately. Peter, Paul and Mary, In the Wind, and See What Tomorrow Brings. I have very nice condition copies of these in my collection already, but I don't know, I went back for them. It is what it is. As I started getting into my teen years and starting to discover music, my mom had a bit of a resurgence of interest in the old records that she hadn't spun that often. We would go to flea markets and stuff and buy a few more for $1 or whatever. This was one that introduced me to groups like the Mamas and the Papas, the Grassroots, Steppenwolf, Three Dog Night, all those guys. Beach Boys, she definitely liked. Here's one we got. As you can see, pretty bad condition. And better condition copies of most of this stuff. But that brings me to my recent thrift vinyl haul. I've been thinking a lot about how the music we grew up with kind of informs your taste later in life, and it just hit me like a couple of months ago. I'm attracted to harmony in music, even right down into reggae. I'm listening to all these Jamaican harmony groups. Well, where does that come from? just kind of struck me out of the blue. But getting into this recent thrift vinyl haul, I went to one of my stores recently. This is probably my first kind of largish haul of 2018. It's been, as I've been saying, it's been pretty slim picking so far. But I went down there one day and they had all these folk records, and it's kind of interesting when you find records that are obviously from the same former owner. And these were all very well cared for, just kind of minimal wear. Joan Baez, I believe this is her debut. Black Vanguard label. I sort of thought I had this one already. I actually went back and checked my collection, and I didn't have it, so I went back and picked that one up again. Just glad it was still there. This is one I had already, but this was an upgrade copy in the thrift store. Five, her fifth album. Gold Vanguard label. Of course, one of the prime movers of the early folk movement, Joan Baez. Another artist, sort of think my mom kind of introduced me to, Judy Collins. This one I had on a later pressing, but they had two copies of In My Life. It's a cover you don't see posted a whole lot, but that's an awesome cover. Be curious to know the story, how that was created. And this is actually a mono copy, tan Electra label. And there was also a stereo copy, both very nice condition. So I grabbed both. Why not, right? And this has got covers of a couple of Dylan songs, Leonard Cohen's Suzanne, what else? Donovan's Sunny Good Street, In My Life, of course, the title track by Lennon and McCartney, the Beatles, Judy Collins. Also had her 5th album there, which is one I did not have. That is on the gold Electra label. This one's more kind of, I would say, traditional folk sounding, at least. You'd almost think you were listening to a Joan Baez album, except she doesn't have quite that high voice. But again, there's some Dylan songs on here, some traditional songs. It's got Mr. Tambourine Man. Early Morning Rain by Gordon Lightfoot is on here. And the last song, there's this kind of a subtle political commentary running through this. It's another reason that it kind of makes me sad folk isn't more respected in the vinyl community. This music was on the forefront of social change in the 1960s. The last song on here is called It Isn't Nice, written by Malvina Reynolds, who is a San Francisco folk artist and political activist. And just recorded live. It's music to get marching in the streets for political causes. It's about the civil rights struggle of the time that many of these folk artists were involved in, even as innocuous artists as Peter, Paul, and Mary were marching with Dr. King in the March to Washington. The lyrics to It Isn't Nice go, "It isn't nice to block the doorway. It isn't nice to go to jail. There are nicer ways to do it, but the nice ways always fail. It isn't nice, it isn't nice. You told us once, you told us twice. But if that's freedom's price, we don't mind. We have tried negotiations and the 3-man picket line. Mr. Charlie didn't see us and he might as well be blind. Now our new ways aren't nice when we deal with men of ice, but if that's freedom's price, we don't mind. How about those years of lynchings and the shot in Evers' back? Did you say it wasn't proper? Did you stand upon the track? You were quiet just like mice, now you say we aren't nice. And if that's freedom's price, we don't mind." So hitting a pretty strident political stance there. Another one I found, I almost flipped past this one. This was one I'd never heard of, but it's the Ian Campbell folk group, UK folk. These are all, by the way, early to mid-60s up to now. That lovely early Electra label. Very nice condition on this one. When I looked this up, Ian Campbell is actually the father of Robin and Allie Campbell from UB40. You can kind of see the resemblance in his profile there. And he's with his sister, who also does vocals on there. But what caught my eye on here was Dave Swarbrick from Fairport Convention is here on fiddle and mandolin. So kind of UK, fairly Scottish flavored folk. I think they were based out of Birmingham. Another Birmingham group, James. Canadian folk, Ian and Sylvia. Northern Journey, this is one I didn't have by them. I don't know how well known they are outside Canada, but their song, was it by them? Four Strong Winds, yeah. Pretty sure they wrote it. Four Strong Winds was almost a second national anthem when I was growing up. I remember being in music class as a little kid, and the teacher would always have us singing songs like that. Four Strong Winds and some of the Simon and Garfunkel songs. I think my music teachers were all ex-folkies. Red Vanguard label here, and handsome looking couple. They did a lot of nice album covers. Ian Thomas grew up in BC, kind of in my part of Canada. Sylvia Fricker from back east. Ian and Sylvia had a nice run of folk records through the 60s before forming the Great Speckled Bird kind of country rock band later on in the 60s, and they were on the Festival Express tour with the Grateful Dead and Janis Joplin and many others. And Sylvia Tyson wrote You Were On My Mind, which is on this album, which was later covered by We Five. Also found this one, Early Morning Rain, lovely song by Gordon Lightfoot that they cover here. Again, lovely album cover, very photogenic. That one is on the, this was an upgrade copy for me, I did have it already, Black Vanguard label. Song for Canada on here. Basically, mainly traditional folk on here. This is one I have already. Again, this is one my mom introduced me to through that Treasury of Great Contemporary Hits compilation. The Mamas and the Papas. Monday, Monday. I can still hear her singing along to that. RCA label, very nice condition cover. Just a few light scuffs on the vinyl. Getting into a bit later from this folk haul. Again, clearly all from the same former owner who had distinctive tastes. There was two by Ry Cooder. First one is Into the Purple Valley. I think this is his second one. I do have his debut, self-titled one. I don't think I showed it on a video, but I picked it up a while back. It's very bluesy. This one is more roots rock. He's got kind of a sly sense of humor and some social commentary running through here. Very nice stuff on there. Cool gatefold. And very nice shape on this one. I show the label. Reprise. Second one by him from later in the decade, Bop Till You Drop. This one is more R&B, early rock and roll flavored. His albums are all cover versions. This one's almost mint condition, Warner Brothers label. Still got a price sticker from Black Swan Records. I was there once or twice. Closed down many years ago. And this has got Chaka Khan on a couple of vocals on here. Gets kind of funky. David Lindley on guitar. Stellar stuff. Very relaxed, rootsy, kind of rock, Americana, folky, kind of runs the gamut. Bruce Cockburn, there was three by him. These records are pretty common around here. I never got around to picking these ones up. I don't know how well known outside Canada he is. He started out in the late 60s. He was in a couple of different rock bands. I think they opened for Jimi Hendrix and Cream at one point, one of his bands. Then he went solo, pursuing a folkier direction. I've got one of his debut album as a solo artist, I believe. I think this is his second, Sun Wheel Dance. This is from 1971. He's quite a good guitar player, quite underrated from what I've heard. But definitely folky. He has some kind of jazz and blues influences that creep into his music. He's very political. There's definitely aspects of his political ideology here, and through subsequent albums. Became very strong in the early 1980s when he kind of hit his commercial peak. He had a lot of hits with songs like If I Had a Rocket Launcher, which was about a trip he took to Nicaragua, which sharpened his political stance, and Lovers in a Dangerous Time, which was quoted by U2 on the Rattle and Hum album. So if you grew up in Canada in that era, you'd know all those songs. They're all classics. They were quite big hits for him at the time. But this is kind of his early 70s folky period. Another one by him, Night Vision. And Joy Will Find a Way. This is from 1975. There's a song on here called Burn, which is, again, very political, and it has kind of a reggae feeling to it. In 1975, that's pretty early. All in very nice condition. Again, these are pretty common records here. Fairly cheap, but you see them in the thrift store, you grab them. Last couple of pickups from this folk haul, Pentangle. This is one I had already. I think I found it at the very same store like a couple of years before. The writing on there, I was wondering if it might be an upgrade copy, but not quite. Pentangle, nice stuff on there. Song here about Lord Franklin. Finally found his lost ship in the last year or so in northern Canada, deep down in the water. And the last find out of this folk haul, probably the one I was most stoked to find, John Martin, Sunday's Child. This is 1975-ish, I believe. Island label, excellent condition. Never heard any John Martin before. I hear a lot about him, so I was really stoked to find this in such nice shape. Very hushed, acoustic, folk. Also gets a bit experimental on one track called My Baby Girl, where he's got some kind of Moog, clavinet, synthesizer touches. Almost gets a bit electronic, I would say. well, it is electronic, but very experimental. And then the rest is more very hushed, very mellow, aptly titled Sunday morning kind of music, and a bit of blues on there as well. So that was my folk haul. Hope you guys enjoyed. It's a genre I'd like to see represented a bit more in the vinyl community. Definitely very influential in popular music in the 60s and 70s. Kind of doesn't get its due these days, as I said, except for a select few artists. So cheers, guys. Thanks for watching, and take care.